percussion at the University of Michigan and has been the principal percussionist with Santa Fe Opera since 1968. You may be familiar with the Equilibrium Press, Equilibrium Products. He's known as a designer, composer, and author. Please join me in welcoming Professor Michael Udow.
Thank you. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce Yachi Chang, who's a graduate student. Dan Karras, who's a sophomore. And I'm trying something new. Not only are all the excerpts on tape, but I've recorded all my text on CD as well. And I've time compressed it a little bit so that the talking is on the rapid side, but that way I can play 36 excerpts in this 48-minute segment and leave a couple minutes for questions. So I hope the balances are okay. We were getting instruments at the very last minute, so I'm just going to play on the xylophone, whatever height it came in as. Sometimes that happens in the real world, so wish me luck. Oh, there's another one. No, that's okay. We'll just use this one. Okay, here we go.
To help keep right on target with the time while providing you with the maximum amount of interesting information, I have recorded my remarks and processed those remarks with the kind of compression program. Though the pacing will be rapid, one should be able to follow along quite nicely. I do hope that this Orwellian approach proves to be acceptable in context of the extensive and diverse ground I will be covering. So here it goes. Mozart's induction of the seraglio uses instruments which came out of the Sultan's Turkish military band. These so-called janissary instruments included a Turkish crescent, a small stick with bells and jingles attached. Though Mozart does not specifically call for the Turkish crescent, we used these bells from North Africa, purchased from Steve Weiss Music years ago, ad-libbed them combined with the triangle part, played by one player. Season, conductor Yves Zabel requested similar janissary instruments in Giacomo Rossini's Italian male chairs. Special care is needed in selecting proper cymbals for Rossini-era opera repertoire due to the pragmatic issues of little to no time to dampen cymbals. So selecting cymbals with divergent, inflating noise-type overtones, creating faster decay is useful. My friends at Sabian, known for their consistent high-quality cymbal making, have taken R&D time to produce this type of Italian cymbal sound, which is appealing not only to me, but a number of conductors we have worked with in Santa Fe. I sometimes employ a down and up motion in my cymbal playing, especially in this repertoire, to inflect the phrase character employed by the strings with their point choices. The noted timpanist Sal Barabio is highly regarded and admired for his vigilant creative attention to this concept of sticking. On the turca instruments are requested by Rossini. A special note to younger symphonic players: ground custom means to play cymbals and bass drum. Solo indicates to play bass drum alone, usually when rolls occur. So watch out for German and English editions of Italian repertoire, as if the score said ground casa, the copyist may have only written bass drum in your part, when it should have been both bass drum and cymbals. Dynamics are only a thumbnail guide. You will note many dynamic shadings and articulations in this excerpt, which begins 8 measures before number 19. This past summer, we performed Rossini's overture to Samaramide with Maestro Lino Pito. Note that at 13 measures after letter U, for the next 8 measures, the symbols are omitted in these additions. This makes perfect sense to me for temporal clarity, and when the symbols do come in on the 9th measure, it adds a lift in the orchestration, leading towards the end of the overture. On the next to the last line, the maestro cut out the symbols for 2 measures, with which I also agree.
These are live recordings from Santa Fe.
My first encounter with Maestro Udow was over the winter some years ago in a series of emails to our personnel manager. This was in advance of his American debut, which took place with us at the Santa Fe Opera. He specifically requested from our management a special advanced meeting about percussion sounds 2 days prior to the first rehearsal of Rossini's Barbieri di Sevilla, and sent detailed email notes about desired sounds, especially in the cavatina in Act 1 with Count Almaviva and Figaro, where sistri, not sistrum, is listed in the part. Sistri means the conductor and or percussionist are free to choose instruments based on the text. In this section, the text refers to a hammer. So for the 32nd sextuplets, the maestro wanted a tiny anvil-like sound, which turned out to be a steel pipe played with my #1 magic flute mallets. He decided on these Chinese bells struck together for a sound representing clinking goblets. In Giacomo Puccini's Tosca, I used my Sabian 19-inch dramatic cymbals to enhance the dramatic conclusion of this opera after Mario meets his demise at the hands of Scarpio's firing squad. Upon hearing the rifles go off, Mario, wearing a white shirt down the stage with his back to the audience, bursts a fake blood bag, turns towards the audience, and falls dead. One night in the early 1970s, the rifles went off, Mario turned, then broke the blood bag, and the low brass section, and I think Will Hutchinson was playing bass drum back then, and I all got plastered with red dye in our tuck shirts. The calf bass drum head still has a bit of residual blood on it. Let's listen to this dramatic conclusion to this exciting work. Earlier in Act 3 of Tosca, there is a wonderful moment when cathedral bells are ringing. Puccini is quite specific about creating a theatrical sonic sense representing church bells from various locations, perhaps as far away as a neighboring village. Note the use of terms indicating that different chimes should seem to come from varied distances. I have found that in our theater, chimes not only need to be played at different locations, but various malice need to be employed to create the desired 5 different distances Puccini asked for in the score. Our lontano bells are located upstage and 1 floor down from stage level, where we use video monitors to see the conductor. Yachi will be lightly playing the Yamaha chimes with different sized brass mallets for equilibrium. I use a heavy rawhide mallet for the bass, clef, low, B flat, and F natural. These bass chimes are made from EMT conduit with a 1/4-inch steel cap welded on the top. I made an octave and a half of these bass chimes for the company when we did the American premiere of Richard Strauss's Die Schweigtone Frau. One of the great things about an opera company is that they have complete shop facilities. Let's listen to a bit of this scene. We'll pick it up on the 3rd line of your music.
Line 2, measure 3.
This past summer, we performed Tchaikovsky and Bach's La Belle Helene, an opera bouffe version of the story of Helen of Troy. This little triangle excerpt, beginning a few measures before rehearsal number 101, can be interpreted with lots of dynamic flair, which really gives the orchestra and the singer a lift. The 16th notes after number 101 are just about the edge of my piano pianissimo dynamic technique. One night, it seemed as if the maestro must have had a late-night engagement or something was going on, and all the tempi were a bit brighter than usual. That night, before we got to this number, I suspended the triangle. By the way, I always keep a second clip available for cases just as this, and played the 16th notes with 2 beaters. And boy, oh boy, I am glad I did, as the tempo was smoking. Now, this performance is one of the reasonable tempi. In the finale, and a few other spots in the opera, there is this little theme on this page at number 44. It is connected with the very good-looking shepherd, Paris. Offenbach added a nice touch by orchestrating for tambourine, alluding to the flock of sheep. I suggested to our conductor, Kenneth Montgomery, that we add little bells played a duet with the tambourine to highlight more directly this moment of coloristic sonic theater, the tambourine idée fixe, if you will. Berlioz would have loved it. In this upcoming excerpt, there is a great deal of complicated staging and dancing, while the chorus is singing with not great sightlines to the conductor. As is sometimes the case in any ensemble, some sections in the orchestra seem to push out frontage of the beat, while other sections tend to lay back. In the first rehearsal with the stage, it was immediately clear to me that I needed to, somewhat forcefully, but with benevolence, take charge with the bass drum, interpreting the various tempi the maestro wanted. There are moments when the maestro inflects a 2-measure a la Breve feeling, which I have noted with tonino markings, and use my mute and stroke to finesse this with the basses. Note at rehearsal number 321 in this production, the maestro added the cymbals back in, which was completely appropriate. At rehearsal number 306 in the finale, I am using my trusty Hamer bass drum now. I use a pictogram to indicate which mallet end, large or small, to use for different entrances. I elected to use a one-handed roll at the end so that I could do more shaping with my mute for the rest of the work. In the finale of Giuseppe Verdi's La Traviata, the composer rhythmically doubles the timpani with the bass drum, which syncs up with the low brass and horns. Note that I am using diddles with finger articulation rather than alternating sticking. Many seasons ago I determined that this added clarity and I could match the brass section articulation best. Our orchestra does tend to play 32nd notes a bit closer to the beat in Italian repertoire style. The bass drum is turned flat. Thank you, Mr. Abel, for his great invention. And the mute is full on the drum. Let's pick it up 3 measures before number 15. Let's listen to the simple part at the end of La Traviata after number 16. As Verdi employs cimbasso rather than tuba, I prefer to use my Sabian 18-inch Germanic cymbals rather than my 19s of bigger, which seem to overpower the low brass. Note the cutoff markings on the part. Always watch the conductor for cutoffs. Hector Berlioz's Benvenuto Cellini is a tricky cymbal part for a number of reasons. It takes crisp, fast motions at number 13 to execute the part. My hands move in a combination of many down-up strokes with supple grip. The diminuendo at measure 231 adds to the complexity of technique. I am using my Sabian 17-inch Germanic cymbals for this passage. From number 16 on, note little cues for articulations, dynamics, heads-up eyeglasses, the timpani trumpet cue. From number 18 on, it's a very good idea to count like crazy, as the harmonic motion is extended, creating exciting, irregular, angular cadences. If you play by ear, you can easily get lost. I will be using my Sabian 18-inch Germanic cymbals for this passage, except for the last note where I'll use my 19-inch Sabians, just for that added pizzazz. Conductor Stephen Sloan's concept of the sleigh bell part semiotic text Katia Kavanova was that the bells serve not only to indicate the departure of Katia's love, but also the ominous foreboding of the psychological state which would befall her. After the five-measure rest, one has to anticipate playing forward on the beat, especially from the back of the orchestra, to line up with the bassoon as well as the first horns in the next two entrances. I asked the props shop to make me this sleigh bell mute box lined with foam, so it serves both as a mute into which the sleigh bells can be lowered for a diminuendo effect, and it also serves as the sleigh bell holder. This performance of our 2000 season mounting Richard Strauss's Electra was conducted by our music director, John Crosby. The ruta at rehearsal number 5 and throughout the opera is representing whips. The violins, in unison with the ruta, play col legno. Maestro Crosby wanted the ruta extremely loud, so I made these giant ruta. For further dramatic effect, I alternated stick on stick to energize the gesture. Positive residual was that it was visually attractive, which a number of my colleagues and the maestro seemed to like. As is often the case, the bass drum strokes in this opera require attention to body weight, mallet choices, articulation, muting to shape the envelope of the sound, including the decay. There are those moments where the bass drum really leads the orchestra and allows the brass to sink their teeth into the music like a shark feeding frenzy. Listen for the timpani cue at rehearsal number 126 and follow along for this ride. At the snare show after number 268, Strauss asks for a triangle meter to be scraped against the edge, no doubt on the right of spring. How Maestro Crosby was passionate about this moment. Trey and I were playing with this for several seasons before winning the San Francisco Symphony position he now holds. Trey and I worked together, trying scraping iron pipes on the side of the tam-tam, and of course files, etc. I came up with the idea of combining Carol Later with the rite of spring for this effect using chains, which the maestro seemed to like.